So in order to stay in accordance with the schedule, we will start this event now. Everyone will continue to join as we start this presentation. I would like to share a quick intro about Symbiosis first. What we do here is that we have created a marketplace for connecting tech companies, mainly in the United States, with software agencies in countries like Mexico, Argentina, Colombia that have available talent. Our main goal is that if you're looking to hire developers for a specific time period, you can source them from our network and hire them for as long as you need them under a flexible monthly basis. So if you're looking to hire, you can always use Symbiosis to do so. Today with us, we have a very special guest speaker, Ms. Harris. Today, she will be talking about her company, the remote and also remote work. She has a presentation, so she's an expert. She's been doing this for a while, and well, I would love to hear your introduction, Nadia.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really flattered. And yeah, remote work is a topic that I absolutely adore, and not because of COVID, absolutely not. Quite on the contrary. And this is what I will try to introduce and share with everybody today. But let me introduce myself properly first to add extra light and explain why I'm the one that you're meeting here today and why it isn't someone else. So, my name is Nadia Harris, and I have a great presentation for you today because I have founded a portal which is called remoteworkadvocate.com. And I have worked with remote first companies for many years. Actually, my remote journey started over 8 years ago, long time before the pandemic. And I have worked with hybrid companies before they were called hybrid companies when it comes to implementing both as a business model. So, more about me, you will be able to see if you want to check it out later on, but being mindful of time, yeah, I hope that my expertise today and everything that I share is going to prove that I know what I'm talking about. And obviously, I look forward to your questions. The more questions, the better. I hope that I will be able to live up to your expectations.
Awesome, awesome. We're very excited about it. Just to remind the audience, you can ask questions anytime. We have the Q&A bottom, right at the bottom part of the screen, right next to the raise your hand one. You can write your question there, and we will read it out loud anytime that we can. And also at the end of this presentation, we will have the Q&A section, so you can ask any important relevant questions that you may have. And we're recording this, so we will share this presentation with all of you afterwards. So yeah, let's get it started.
Okay, thank you very much. And as I've said initially, I have a presentation for you today. Yeah, so I assume that you can see it, and I will definitely make it a slideshow as well. So you can see me in a small window. The most important thing is what I will be talking about. So, improving remote working, improving remote working. Remote work is on the rise. We know this, we feel it. And it's been one of the most frequently Googled well, words, phrases, remote within the past year and a half. Yeah, and let's add some extra light to it. Let's try to say in the very beginning what it even is, because how I see it is that the term remote work is being used sometimes as remote work, and sometimes it is work from home. And then I really get confused with it a bit because this is definitely not the same thing. And as I've written here on the slide, is that real remote work is not pandemic remote work from home. Absolutely not. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
exactly. So the only thing that happened is that we were kicked out of our offices, locked up at home with absolutely zero flexibility, too much screen time, Zoom fatigue that I will talk about later on as well, not being able to leave the house, fear, stress, and additionally, with tons of people around us, like our families, distracting us even more than it would be in an open office space. So this is pandemic work from home, okay? Plus, it's an emergency solution that was not prepared. It was a shock to everybody. And as long as it's been with us for a year and a half, then we have adjusted in a way, but still we feel overwhelmed. And we have this discussion going on Will we go back to the office? How should companies encourage people to go back to the office? Some believe that actually going back to the office, going back to normal will happen. I always say, what is normal? Normal is something that we already know because somebody invented it in the past. But the truth is that now living in the digital era, because that's what we're facing, that's what's all around us, that's how we can see each other today, shows that the approach that we had in the past is probably not going to be relevant in the future. And it's not something that happened overnight. It's not something that happened with COVID only. COVID was the accelerator of all this,
A
okay? And
trigger, right? Yeah.
right, and that's why we're here today. So now let's go to hybrid work also, because I just distinguished remote work, pandemic work from home, and also remote work and work from home. Those are not two things. Work from home is tailored to a certain location. Remote work is not. So remote work is a much broader topic here. But let's take a look at hybrid work as well, because I see this a lot on internet forums where people discuss and ask the question, oh, how do you work right now? We work in a hybrid manner. Like, okay, so what does it mean you work in a hybrid manner? Or sometimes we go to the office, sometimes we work from home, depending on the limits of people that are allowed to be in the office. And I say this has nothing to do with hybrid work. Stop tailoring hybrid work to the location. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So it should be a scalable model, a scalable work model, business model, where we will combine our remote first mindset. Okay, so everything that is in the cloud, how can we get things done with a people-centric office? And then going back to the topic of how we should encourage people to go back to the office, I say you shouldn't have to encourage anyone if it's justified to come and meet. You don't encourage anyone to go, for example, to a shopping center if they can do shopping online. They do it because they want to. So how can we redesign our office to say, hey, people want to spend time here. How can we make it a meaningful experience? So all this and how to navigate it, I will be sharing with you today. And again, feel free to ask questions.
Yeah.
All right. So what is the agenda? What's the agenda? I know that you saw the agenda briefly in the invite, but let me share this once again, just to be on the safe side. So first, we will talk about the why we're saying that we want to go remote, why we're saying that we want to go hybrid. What's the reason? Is it the pandemic? That would be ridiculous only to say that it's the pandemic. Okay. And then again, on a company level and on a personal level, this will be really important because we will have two aspects. Then we will talk about the toolkit, which tools help us to work remotely. And obviously we are on Zoom right now. We would say, yes, Zoom is a tool to work remotely. Well, I would say yes and no. That would be a really narrow approach, and I'll tell you why. We will talk about synchronous and asynchronous communication, what it is and how to design our work around it. Then we'll also distinguish processes that we most probably need to change to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And we will obviously already talk about scalability and implementation, because everything that we want to build has to be scalable so that it's not going to be a limitation for us, but an opportunity for growth. And one more thing, which I'm going to mention also in the end, why I'm saying experimentation, because I see that companies are trying to copy other companies. I get this a lot, like with many clients. They reach out to me and they tell me, okay, so can you tell me how others do it? I'm like, yes, okay, I can tell you how others do it for inspiration, but not for the fact that you should do the exact same thing. Because let's go back to step one. Why do you
Mhm.
want to do this, right?
Right. And I imagine that every company is completely different from another, right? So it is important that all the activities that you implement are specific to your own team and to your own equipment and to your own company per se, right?
Absolutely, exactly. I absolutely agree. And there will be no one size fits all approach. Absolutely not. Okay, maybe before I maybe go to the tools, let's stop here with the why. That's exactly what you said. So what I see now with companies is that they say, okay, so we will work in a hybrid manner. And what does it mean to work in a hybrid manner? How to define it? And I shared the definition with you in the beginning, saying that it's a combination of a remote first mindset with a people-centric office space. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that we can have different models. Some companies say, okay, 2 days during the week you will be able to work from home, the rest you will be able to work from the office, right? And then some say, okay, but we will completely redesign the office and you don't have to come to it unless it's for collaboration purposes. We see this at Google, we see this at Microsoft, we see this at Dropbox. Dropbox is an amazing inspiration because now they don't even use the word office anymore. They use the word studio. Okay. It's
Okay.
exactly. And that would be from the company's perspective. Ask your why. Are you willing to go hybrid or are you willing to go remote? Because what's the reason for that really in terms of your business case, right? Today I spoke with a company that told me, they asked me, oh, can you give us some kind of advice? What should we do? We are massively using talent. Can you recommend somebody to help us find people? I said, well, I don't think that the problem here isn't finding people. The problem is why they left. And I asked them the question, what is happening? And they said, oh, we are primarily in the IT industry and everybody has to work on site. I'm like, here you go. The problem is solved immediately, right? So this is like, doesn't make sense. And then from a personal level, because I get this question a lot too, how should I start working remotely? Like, what are the first steps? What should I do in the very beginning? My response is, if you want to start working remotely, you have to ask yourself a crucial question. Am I ready to bear the responsibility? Okay. The responsibility of designing my work schedule, okay, on my own, and tracking my productivity, my ups and downs, and designing the whole infrastructure and environment around me, knowing that it fits my needs and delivers the output that is needed for the company. There will be nothing like we know from the past that you come to the office and the 9 to 5 model, your manager will be standing next to you and he's going to tell you, oh, you clogged in, you're at work. Okay, so you're sitting there 8 hours straight and you're clogging out. And here, this is what you have to do.
Hmm.
No, here you're on your own. You create this experience. So if it doesn't work out, the first person to blame is you. So you have to really know how to navigate it and go the extra mile and open up for new opportunities and rethink how you've worked before and how you're going to work now. Okay.
Right. And I would like to just ask you this part because I believe that companies right now are under a lot of pressure to move towards remote, right? Even though that it might be different remote working, they're doing home office with their employees. They are thinking about I believe that they think that it's the same because they are not in the office and they are working at their own space, like we mentioned before. But do you think that remote work, or in this case, home office, the two options that there is, it applies to every single company, or some of them should remain constant and say, like, you know what, we have to do this office time at least, I don't know, like 5 times per week on the hybrid model? Or do you think that this applies to everyone or just a couple of companies?
Well, it depends on the industry. So the first thing is I would not want to talk anyone into hybrid work or remote work because that is not the goal. You have to figure it out yourself if it applies to you. So definitely there are some industries where I would say it would be challenging to go remote first, like the production manufacturing, for example, that wouldn't work. But you can go hybrid. The back office can be fully remote and people can be on site, the ones who are workers in the manufacturing per se. But then to establish rules, let me share a case with you. I was helping an e-commerce company last year, by the end of last year, and they were saying, okay, we don't know if we want to go hybrid or if we want to stay with our offices. We don't know that. We are going to do a survey. So it was a company of over 300 people, and they had a headquarters and other smaller offices distributed all around the country. And here's what happened. So they run this survey and they said it's going to be all for one for all. Okay.
Mhm.
So whatever the result is, that's what we're going to do. And what is the context? The context is that over 60% of the workers, they worked in customer service. So that was sales, right? So reaching out to people, cold calling, and also customer support. And these offices were usually with cubicles, obviously, they were usually located in smaller areas, in smaller cities, where people normally had to walk for 10, 15 minutes to get to the office. Okay.
Okay.
And the company didn't support anything. They didn't give them any tools or anything. And those are really low paid jobs. So obviously the people didn't make enough money to buy a mansion and have a private workspace, at home. It was like, and mostly those were like students and really young people. So they voted for no. The majority said, over 60% said, no, we want to go back to the office. So then the company said, yes, so now everybody is going to go back to the
Mm,
office. And then the remaining 40%, which was IT, which was marketing, which was even finance, they said, we don't want to do this. Why are you pushing us? Well, if everybody goes to the office, everybody goes back to the office. I'm like, come on, this is complete nonsense. You
insane.
cannot do
Yeah.
that, right? Because the intention was completely different in the beginning. It's not that the people didn't want flexibility, but it was just tough for them to work in a one-bedroom apartment, sharing it with other people because they still studied. In addition to that, to be like this, working
Yeah.
online customer service, it's just a no, and being on the phone with people constantly, right? So yeah, you have to respond yourself. What is your business goal? What are you willing to achieve? Is it the fact that you don't have talent locally? Is it the fact that you want to grow? Is it another aspect? For example, people are leaving your company for a competition,
Mhm.
for other competitors. Yeah. Is it the thing that you want to create a more diverse environment, maybe, and start hiring people from different locations? Or is it the fact that your people wanted and you're just willing to go with what the world is offering right now? So there are different aspects of it, from a personal perspective and from a company level as well.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Understood. Awesome.
All right. So, and now tools. I promised that I would share best tools, but again, I'm not going to tell you use these tools because again, it should be your own context. What is crucial when you design a toolkit? So as I said in the very beginning, Zoom is not the only remote tool that exists. I'm sure that many of you know that by now after
Right.
working remotely. However, in the beginning, when the pandemic started, I saw these comments, especially on LinkedIn. So how should we work remotely right now? Yeah, download Zoom. And then what happens when we download Zoom is we are trying to mirror our in-office experience the way we're doing it now. So people started sitting in millions of meetings because we can see them. We need to know if they work. And then spending so much time during remote meetings, and they were even more tired. So it's not the idea of downloading this kind of software, even if it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Cisco WebEx, Skype, which I don't recommend. That's one of the tools I don't recommend because it's just not even supported that much anymore. But we should design it. We should design an infrastructure, and we should always think what connects with one another. Okay. So in this case, that would be, if we decide to go for one tool, let's see if it's possible to have it connected so that it creates an infrastructure. What we are willing to achieve is to get into everything with one click. Okay. We want to avoid the situation that we have different, on our screens, we have 10 applications, and everywhere we have to start clicking in and clicking out. It's like, oh, it's too much, and all this beeping from everywhere. This is completely not scalable. So we have two major infrastructures. The first one is Microsoft, obviously. And the second one is everything that is connected with Google. Those are the two major ones. So when you're, for example, with Microsoft and Office 365, you will have Microsoft Teams, you will have the whiteboard, you will have OneDrive. All this, you have all this in one by default. There is obviously more to it, but that's what you have. And then, for example, when you have Google, right? Then whenever you download a new tool, then you want to make sure that it's all going to fall into the infrastructure, that you don't have to log in several times. Let me give you an example that, for example, let's say you have Slack that I will mention in a moment. You have Slack. You can connect different tools with Slack. You can connect Asana with Slack. You can connect Fellow, I will speak about later on, with Slack. You can have other plugins. You can connect Loom with Slack, everything all together so that it becomes your centralized database. What you want to do, no matter which infrastructure you have, you want to centralize it. And the tools that I think we need, there are 4 different categories. And I would say whenever you don't use a tool, ask yourself why, It's either because you don't know how to use it, others don't know how to use it, okay?
Hmm.
Or it's too difficult, or you just don't need it. It's very simple, okay? So I always go for less is more. So if I share all these tools with you today, you may ask me a question, which one should I download? I will tell you, well, you have to dig deeper and ask yourself
Right.
if you really need it, right? So
Yeah.
less is more. Exactly. Yeah, and what do we have? We have project management tools in this case. So project management tools, I have mentioned the ones that we know the most probably, and that would be Asana, that would be Notion, that would be Trello, that would be Monday, anything that allows us to manage projects. So we see who is assigned where, who does what the progress track is, and then we are able to measure the output, and our communication doesn't get lost. We don't want to keep sending emails back and forth or creating numerous communication channels on Slack or on Microsoft Teams, like, going back and forth. I even had the situation I think this week that I was doing a workshop for a company, and then they told me that, we have this problem that all the documents that we want to collaborate on, we send each other by email, and then someone starts working on, they download it, they start working on it, and then they send it back. And sometimes it turns out that two people are working on the same document, and well, one is a waste of time because it's not the actual version anymore. I said, come on, how can you make your life so difficult? So
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a problem from 15 years ago, right? Like,
exactly. Like, well, do that. And then here, if you have these tools, you have Asana, Notion, Trello, Monday, whatever you have, there's many more. Then you can embed it into it, anything that you work on, right? And then you don't have to scroll for hours and look for, things that in your
yeah.
email account. That's ridiculous. So then we have communication tools. And here we can distinguish those tools. We can do verbal and nonverbal. Again,
Mm.
I just listed the most known ones, which would be Slack. I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Discord, the alternative of Slack, which is not that amazing, but still companies use it. And then we have Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams can be both for video purposes, video calls, virtual calls like we're doing right now here on Zoom, but it can also be for written communication. Literally, what I've discovered, because I work both with Microsoft Teams and I implement it in companies, and I work with Slack, Teams beautifully copies are in Slack. So yeah, so it is not there yet, but it's said that it's definitely more secure because it belongs to the Office 365. And we have Loom. Loom, just as an inspiration, I'm sure some of you know, Loom again has a version for Microsoft Teams as well, which is embedded into the Office 365. But for now, Loom is a tool which allows us to record a quick video, share a screen, say something, and this is also asynchronous communication that I will go back to in a second. So for communication, we can write and we can also speak up, and it doesn't have to be in real time. That's really
Okay.
interesting. Yeah. And then we go to real-time collaboration. And again, here we have Miro. Maybe some of you know, some of you don't. The major competitor would be Mural, and obviously MS Whiteboard, which is by far not as good as Miro or Mural, but they're doing their best again. Yeah, and again, it is just said that it's more secure because of the fact that it's not on external servers, and
Mm.
that's why companies decide to go for it within their infrastructure of Office 365. Anyway, those are all whiteboards that you can collaborate with your team in real time, and that's amazing because you can also embed them in all other tools that I have just mentioned. So you don't need to be physically in the office. You may want to, but again, you don't have to because it's now all possible online. And then what we want to make sure, as I've said, is a transparent infrastructure, scalable infrastructure, which means that things are not completely out of context. So it can't be that way. I'll give you a good example. You're sending an invite to somebody for a call that you have scheduled. But the problem is that this invite doesn't have a link to the video tool that you'll be using. So you have to go to the video tool manually and send the link later on again. No, this
No.
is a no. You cannot do this. It has to be connected and
Yeah.
clear rules. Again, the rules will be what are we using each tool for? Okay, so we don't want to create a chaos. It can't be this way that One team in a company will work on Asana, the other one will work on Trello. They will keep sending each other links, and then they will not know where to find anything. And then one team uses E1 channel on Slack, the rest doesn't use the channel but sends emails about the same context. Again, no, we have to have some rules. Which tool is going to be used how? What's going to be the purpose? Who will use it? How frequently will use it? And all that kind of stuff. So this is something that we should always keep in mind, and only then it can be efficient.
Right. And I'm sorry, but how much time there normally takes for a company to get used to all of these tools? Because I can imagine that they start working with a few of them and then they start growing as much as they need to. But how much time in average?
Hmm. So there are companies that are really tech savvy and companies that are really open. Usually, what I've observed in the startup environment, smaller companies it takes less time for them, just because they're very agile and they usually, depending on the industry, don't have that much security behind. So it's easier for them, and because of the sensitivity of data that they're using, it's not like you have to go for MS Whiteboard and you can't use Miro. You can do whatever you want as long as it's scalable, which on the other hand makes it really chaotic because they have everything for everyone doing everything, but then again, everything is lost.
Hmm.
I know I mentioned everything so many times, but the purpose is to
No.
say chaos, chaos, chaos. So that's what they do. And then we have another category, which are companies that are bigger and also that are corporations. So the ones that are corporations will either have their internal tools, and it will also take a lot of time because they have long processes that they have to go through, or really, so we will need many approvals, and there will also be the aspect of security of keeping all the data that we have together and avoiding leakage. So that's, the implementation is one thing, but then we have to learn it, and then again it depends. If people are more tech savvy, they learn it just like that. And if I once implemented it in a company where the majority of people, um, the age range, not that I am saying something about people who are a bit older, absolutely not, but they're just not used to it by nature so
Yeah.
much as millennials would be. So the target group was 45, 50 plus. So as much as some people were really open and navigating it super quickly, others needed more time. And without that training, I can't say that the implementation is complete. So you may have a company that you have an IT department and they will swallow it just like that and they will be so ready. I have it during remote workshops when I have people from in one company from IT and people from a different department that the only thing they've been doing, they've been writing emails, and that's technology for them. And then how to connect them and say, hey, we're going to be at one stage, we have to be on the same page. So it may take time and it differs.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so now the most common questions that we have, the most common bias, I would say, bias and challenges. There's a bit of bias and a bit of challenges as well. I would say some of them come from the pandemic and some of them come because appear because we probably haven't done our homework properly. So the first one is isolation and loneliness. Oh my goodness. I see so many articles online saying that remote workers are isolated and that they suffer from loneliness. And I can't read this anymore because I think that this is completely not true. If you design your experience properly, again, remote workers, the ones who are able to thrive in this digital era, they're not isolated and they're not lonely. They have the freedom of leaving the house, working from a co-working space, going to a cafe, sometimes even going to the office space if they work in a hybrid manner, meet friends, meet others. Even if they stay and work at home, they can leave the house in the afternoon and they can go to the gym and socialize. Me, for example, as I've mentioned, I've been a remote worker for years and years and years. And what I do, well, I would never go back to the office, and there is absolutely no price that anybody could pay for me to go back to the office. It will be a no. It's the freedom and it's the flexibility because I like traveling a lot. So I go to so many different places and that inspires me, and I can be connected with people globally. So again, during the pandemic, it was a huge limitation not being able to get out and leave. And I was sitting in one place for 7 months. That was like the biggest punishment, literally. Nothing connected to freedom. And then I felt a bit isolated, right? But again, this is a result of the pandemic, not of true remote work, where remote work is a choice, okay? A choice which fosters flexibility rather than somebody imposes something on us that you have to work from home because of restrictions. This is completely not the case. Then we have the bias and imposter syndrome. And this is actually really important because when we deal with messages, written messages, quite often, there are statistics that say that over 50% of our written messages are being misinterpreted. This is really scary. So when we write messages to one another, then yeah, sometimes we may say okay. Sometimes we may not even acknowledge that we received something. And then when we are alone without our coworkers, we are unable to see these reactions. We may start thinking, oh, for sure he had something bad in mind. And I'm already biased because they responded, okay, I put so much work and effort into this and I just get an okay. Like, come on, you don't value me as a person. You don't value my output. This happens after some time, trust me. And imposter syndrome, again, I send something to someone and then somebody doesn't respond because maybe they're overworked or whatever. And then I sit at home and I'm like, I'm not good enough. They are not responding because they most probably want to fire me. I think so. Others did it better. That presentation was better than mine. So lack of feedback, lack of
Mm,
communication, lack of performance tracking, ongoing performance tracking, and I'm not talking about yearly evaluations. So for 12 months, tell somebody to keep doing what they're doing in a remote environment and evaluate them once a year. Good luck. Okay, you have to do it constantly to make sure that you can track progress and that this person is on the same page as you and that they feel appreciated. So
right.
this is right, and many
Yeah.
companies do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that we have all experienced that, right? Like ultimately been talking with each other, and even though that we might have a good communication internally, and we call each other and talk and everything, you get this feeling. I totally understand the bias and also the imposter syndrome. I don't know. It is part of this new interaction that we have as a team.
it is, and I recently wrote an article on my blog. So remoteworkadvocate.com, whoever wants to access, you can check it out. I wrote an article about emoji because I believe that emoji, well, that's the purpose of emoji in the first place. Some people tell me, oh, emoji, this is not serious enough. I'm like, come on, you have to use emoji to spice it up a bit. So if somebody's sending you something, that they've worked on quite a while, instead of saying okay, you can send them a party parrot with Slack, and that's going to be like, yay, we're celebrating, cool, well done, amazing. There are many
Right.
practices like kudos, for example, kudo cards in remote teams that I also implement in hybrid teams. But again, we have to show some emotion and not just, and not really try to sit and during Zoom calls and talk for hours and whatever, but at least even when we write, show some acknowledgement and say that, hey, we are human beings, not just robots that are typing.
That's right. That's completely right. Yeah, and it also makes you feel better, right? When you read someone
Absolutely.
that, yeah,
Come on, you get a party parrot, you're like, yeah,
exactly.
that's the way it is, right? It's very obvious, like a no-brainer. So, and then we have, and this is serious now, Zoom fatigue and too much screen time. So this is something that I mentioned in the very beginning. It's that companies tried to, by default, mirror their in-office experience into the remote world.
Mhm.
So what I've seen, daily check-ins every day for 45 minutes. Everybody has to be there during a check-in. Everybody has to attend because we're going to have a discussion about what was done yesterday. Seriously, no. It's really a no. You don't have to do that. And then by the end of the day, some companies had this idea, okay, so at 4 or at 5, 15 minutes before we finish working, then again, we are doing a virtual check-in and we are discussing, everybody shares what they did today. This is a complete no. And then again, how many meetings? The problem of meetings was always with us because we would attend many meetings that were meaningless when they were not virtual. But the thing is that we kind of socialized a bit. We looked at people, a lot was going on, the majority we even liked. So it was an opportunity to be somewhere, to be around people. Now, the problem is that if we do this remotely, this is too much screen time, and our
Yeah.
eyes get literally crazy. You know what I'm doing? Instead of looking into the camera, I see my picture, and constantly I'm looking. I have to switch it off. This is one practice that you're not supposed to. It's like talking with yourself. This is completely crazy. So it distracts you from everything and makes your eyes hurt. So people spend too much time looking at the screen. And I even asked this question recently again. Why do you sit in front of your laptop when you have a team meeting, which is really very loose and nothing that you have to share a document or whatever? Who told you this? Nobody. I'm like, okay, so why can't you take your phone and go to the park? Oh, I don't know if it's allowed. Have you asked? No. So why we don't have to sit like this straight for 6 or 7 or 8 hours just because we're working? That's not the way we're doing this. So here again, it is about trying to go more towards asynchronous communication, that I will also say in a second, and then lack
Okay.
of inclusion of remote workers in a hybrid work environment. So
Yeah.
I mentioned a remote first mindset. Why? Because everything, all the processes that we have, all the communication that we have, that should all be in the cloud. Because if it's not, then some people will be in the office, they will have these water cooler conversations, and the remote workers will have absolutely zero knowledge about the fun or facts or whatever is going on because they are not here. There was this ridiculous situation that happened many times before the pandemic when working from home, the so-called home office, was a perk for chosen ones. And then, so you are working from home, but then somebody comes to the office and asks, oh, is person A here? Oh no, they're out of office. They're not at work today. So, but they're working from home. So, are they at work? Are they not at work? So, what is going on here? So, and this is a huge challenge. So,
Yeah.
hybrid, exactly. So, hybrid is not going to be about being in the office or not being in the office. This is not hybrid work, forget it. Hybrid is going to be about having everything, the core business in the cloud, and meeting for a certain reason. Okay? That's the way it works. Not physical presence. I mean, how are you going to convince your people if you say, okay, during the week you'll be able to work from home Mondays and Tuesdays, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday come to the office. But guess what you'll be doing? The exact same thing, gazing at your screen for hours in a cubicle.
Yeah.
And but I'll convince you by giving you pizza on Tuesday for free.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy. It's crazy. I agree, and I believe that this part of the job is something that happened first in the IT industry before the pandemic and all that stuff. Many of these guys were used to do home office, and like you mentioned, they were excluded from all the other activities. Sometimes, like, okay, we all went to the park, or we all went to that particular place, and the IT guys were like, "Hey, we never received an invite, right? Just because we were doing home office." So it's
exactly.
something, yeah,
Absolutely. So we really should keep that in mind. And I mean, it's a loose discussion today and a chat that is very pleasant. But again, there is a lot of work to do behind the scenes to make that work. It's not going to happen just like that. Absolutely not. Okay. So then now going to the hybrid, whatever. So how do we do hybrid? On-site and remote. Okay, it has to be a win-win. Companies think that it's a win-win because we keep the office and you get what you want because you can work from home. In a way, that's true, but there's more to the story, as I've shared. So look at on-site, look at the office. So it's people-centric, it's justified, and it builds connections. You don't have to give you don't have to incentivize anyone to come to the office, but they want to go because they feel it makes sense. Okay, they want to do it for connections, or they want to go because it's justified for some, I don't know, strategic reason or team collaboration or whatever. A different story is a hybrid meeting. When some people will work far away, there will be remote workers, and then they will usually never be in the office. That's done a different way, but that would be a huge topic again, but we're just trying to share everything in a nutshell today. So what are the benefits? Again, the team can get to know one another personally. So that's a great thing. Look, when we have remote first companies, they also meet every once in a while in person. Everybody does that, right? So here, that's the reason why we should go to the office. So if you plan work with your team and you want to have a weekly meeting with your team, don't do it on Zoom on Monday if you're planning to be in the office on Tuesday. Don't do
Yeah.
it. Don't do things,
Yeah.
right? So if you're in the office and you have so much time there, try to push all meetings there. And Tuesday, when people are working from home, give them space to do deep work. Okay? Not don't bother them with things popping up from everywhere. If you could have asked that question yesterday. So that's the way I see it. And then again, it's easier to build trust and a positive experience. It makes you feel that, oh, it's cool that we all belong together. Again, not always, because there are remote first teams that I know, and remote first companies that have never met in person. They have amazing connections, but that is essentially what the office should be for.
Mhm.
And then we have, if I'm rushing too much, then let me know, then stop
No, it
me.
is great. It is great.
Oh,
No, no.
so
No,
I'm gonna
it
be
is awesome.
from one topic to the other. Okay. And then we have remote. What is remote for? Again, it's a choice because it fosters flexibility and tracks the output. It's not about, I'm letting you work from home, but you have to send me a report of what you've done. No, it's not a perk anymore. It is about tracking the output. So all these apps that I've shown you in the very beginning, when it comes to project management, they will show you who has done what. You can have a Gantt chart and you can see how progress is being tracked. Is it done? It's not about sitting somewhere. And there is this dramatic software that some companies download, and I cry for hours when I hear this. It's tracking your mouse moves. If your mouse is
Oh my
moving,
gosh.
that means you're working. Come on.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And we all hate that, right? Like
Yeah,
in your
exactly.
culture, I don't know, like
Exactly. But again, my question is, what are you tracking? Are you tracking work, or are you tracking a mouse move? Because I saw that was when the pandemic started, that was in social media. Some people started buying that with cables and connecting it to fans and watching Netflix, and like, look, I fooled my employer because I'm watching Netflix and my mouse
and my
is
mouse is
moving.
moving.
Yeah.
My
Come
God.
on. You're not tracking progress, you're tracking something ridiculous, fake. And then instead of being adults, this is not daycare, we're playing a game which is nonsense and delivers nothing, adds no value for anyone. Really, so that's a complete no. Not to even mention that there are some companies that would say that they will monitor you when you work and your camera has to be switched off. So that is even worse. Let's not even get there, because that would be, I would have to
Yeah,
say how much
it
I
is
did.
sad. It is sad to hear that. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Nadia. And I believe that it's because this is something that happens a lot with your own perspective of how other people behave, right? Because you think that other people are lazy, other people will take advantage if they get to do remote work. They won't be working; they will be watching Netflix. But the reality is that if you set goals, the key performance indicators all straight, and they understand them, and they complete those milestones, that's good, right? Like they are working. They don't need to spend 8 hours, 10 hours on the screen being monitored. I don't know.
There are obviously employment rules when it comes to the number of hours. That is true. That's a different story. But essentially, you shouldn't be tracking presence, physical presence, but performance. And you're not going to track performance by checking out if someone is sitting at their desk. No,
Right.
absolutely. Okay. And I also mentioned that asynchronous communication is the core. Asynchronous communication, what is it? This is all kinds of communication that is not performed in real time. So now we're doing synchronous communication because I'm saying something, you're listening, and you're responding. My message is being received. So whether you say yeah, or it's acknowledged, in a way, it's acknowledged. It's not that I just send it and it waits for you. No, it's acknowledged. At the same time, it happens together. Okay. And then asynchronous communication is that when I send you some kind of message, can be verbal or non-verbal, but you are not going to take care of it right away. You don't receive it right away. Like, you don't get to know what's the message of my message in that manner, maybe, but we can do it later. So it's this way that when we collaborate during a project, that I do some things and I let you know. I know that you work, for example, in the afternoon, I work in the morning, and I let you know, hey, this is done. So
Mhm.
this is how you can take a look at the mock-up. For example, I will record a Loom video So I don't have to show you in real time because you'll be able to see it when you're ready. And I've already done that, right? And then
Right.
again, synchronous communication, when we Google it, it's something that appeared again with the pandemic. There's been more and more and more about asynchronous communication. I'm like, come on, this is nothing new. We've had letters for centuries. It's we wouldn't send a letter to someone and sit and wait for weeks until somebody responds to us. We were doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing new. It's all about organizing ourselves. And I'm not saying that only asynchronous communication. Obviously not, because synchronous communication, meetings, all that is going to be necessary too, but not all the time. And
So
especially when dealing with different time zones.
right. So it's a mixture, right, of both parts, the
Yeah,
asynchronous communication and the real-time communication. Got it. Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Um,
we have a couple of questions on the Q&A section. I don't know if you could exit and read it out loud,
mhm.
Nadia. It's on the Q&A button, right
Yeah,
in. Okay.
I see it. Has remote work decreased overall office politics? Any tangible study of this? Yes. So there is a company that is called Colliers, and you can check it out. Colliers. That's one, and the second one is called Gartner with a T, and they share a lot of information about it. And I wouldn't even say office politics. Obviously, in the very beginning, there was a huge discussion going on and a lot of hostility, saying even to this extent that there is this co-working space, WeWork. Okay, so what happened with WeWork is that WeWork was always located in the city center. Okay, so always, so like in really prestigious locations. So again, if people decided to change their lifestyle and move out of the city, then they wouldn't use that workspace, right? So the purpose was lost because it was again centralized. So, and that person said, I think it was the CEO, he made this famous statement, but dramatic statement a couple of months ago, where he said that you will recognize engaged employees in those who return to the office. The rest is not engaged and doesn't care. It was something like that. Uh, and
Crazy.
everybody said, well, obviously you're losing business. So now companies are starting to understand that offices will stay, but not as cubicles anymore, not but rather as collaborative spaces. So now there is less hostility and more, hey, it's time to redesign what we know because it's not going to be the way it was, rather than shouting, come back to the office, the pandemic is going to end. It's not about the pandemic ending anymore. It's about changing the way we work. Okay, the next question. What should be policy about recording meetings? Because it seems to me that a good psychologically trained person could track possible bad habits and relationships and then work with the parties to get positive psychological emotional work habit change. Uh, this is a tough topic. I would say if people agree to do this, then do it. And if you're trying to make it an experiment, um, and a way of surveillance over people, and observe their behavior to draw conclusions by an external person, you're going to generate more problems um, than trust, because the people will feel like something is wrong here. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but maybe let's talk to the people first. Okay. So if you want to organize a psychologist, maybe these people should speak with the psychologist first and say what they fear, for example, how they feel, and then your business objectives. So my question would be, what's your business objective to do so? Is it just to get to know um, positive emotional work habits? That is a good question here. I don't think I would evaluate somebody's body language during a meeting. I would rather speak with them first. So, what's a good source for management to be aware? Again, to be aware in terms of what? When it comes to hybrid work, when it comes to remote work, there are quite a few sources that I can recommend in terms of policies, for example, um, depending who is the management. So, if you like big companies and if you like that kind of yeah, information, then I would say check out Microsoft. They have a great manual for both managers and for both employees in terms of hybrid work and how to do it right. Um, Definitely this, and then yeah. So that's what it would be, and there is also this cool company that's called Remote How. They share a lot. My blog is a good resource because I combine a lot. So depending what you need, but I see the next question. We have some learning resources from the psychologist on these hospital TV shows. The writers of those shows, psych threats. Again, well, the question is, you're saying you have a great resource, but why are you willing to do this? If you have a justified cause and that brings you somewhere, if you're tracking a certain thing, you want to get to know some certain information because something is unclear, because you're having doubts, the people are having doubts, or the people are expressing that they don't feel well, maybe this is a resource that you want to use to find out and prepare a whole root cause analysis, even to that extent. But just because you have a resource to use it, I am not sure where that would bring me. That would be a good question. So, well, I don't know the context that much, so it's hard for me to tell what I would do in that particular situation. But think about the purpose first, and then about the people as well, how it would make them feel. Because now you have this new situation different from the old normal, with a major impact being psychological. Yeah, so there is psychological, but it's also connected to change management a lot. So obviously we can see how we feel, but it's not also going to be rushing into something new. But if we know where we're going, so are we willing to go backwards, and are we willing to go and check what this has cost for us, how it makes us feel? Again, psychological effects of the pandemic, because that's what it would be. Everything that influenced us, obviously it doesn't make us feel good, it makes us all feel bad and out of our comfort zone. But then as a long-term situation, as a long-term solution, my question would be rather, what are you willing to build, and what resources can you use to do that? um, Perhaps we should have used this approach in the old normal. This is a learning situation. Exactly. I would rather go for this approach. How can we learn from what we know? Maybe with your team, and that's what I recommend to some companies. I say, hey, just do you meet with your team? Do you meet with the people that you work with? Maybe every quarter, maybe every month, and just do even a mirror board or whatever, and say, hey, what worked well? What didn't work that well? What did we like? What didn't we like? What made us feel good? What didn't? What would we like to change? How do we see it? And the more people, the more influence people have, and the more they feel that it's a learning situation that we all can create impact together, the better they will feel, and they will have more perspectives, rather than digging into how does the pandemic make us feel. That would be my approach. All right, so I am going to move on really quickly, just to share
Right.
some cool things with you. So the first one that you can see on the left is Crisp. Crisp, KRISP. It's a really cool tool that, thanks to it, you have no background noise. That's a really interesting thing. So if you download it and then you want to go to a cafe, you want to have a call with somebody, that person is not going to hear your background noise, and you're not going to hear their background noise. Really cool thing, especially if you don't want to work in your house. Okay. And then we have a really cool app that is called Fellow. Fellow is again a tool that allows us to create frameworks of our meetings, to make them really very productive. Who says what, when, at which stage? What is the what is the end solution? What is being done? Who is going to be responsible for what? And you have, when you access it, then you have hundreds of templates ready, and you can connect it to all your meeting tools that you have, to all calendar invites, and then integrate it together with project management software. This is really cool. And then below on the left, you have a really cool app that is called Standuply. You can integrate it, for example, with Slack. You can integrate it with Microsoft Teams, and this does a asynchronous stand up, which means you don't have to meet to check the progress, to track the progress, but then you set it up, for example, for 2 hours every other day or every day, and people, they just say what was done, what they're planning to do, and then again what the blocker is, for example, and you get a full report. So you get the whole picture, who's doing what and how you can track it. And then if there's a blocker, you can meet with somebody. And then really quickly, some other tools, if you're willing to hire people remotely, I'm sharing just a company that's called Deal, but there's more. There's Oyster, there's Remote, there's Omnipresent, there is a lot. So if you don't have an entity in a certain country, but you want to, let's say you are a US based company, you want to hire people as employees in Germany, just an example, you can't hire them based on an employment relationship. But thanks to companies like that, like Deal, they're called employers of record. So they become the employer and they have a relationship with you that minimizes the risk, and that people can be employed as well according to each legal, I would say, provisions in every country, and labor laws. Then we have Dropbox, obviously, to avoid these emails with attachments. Just, I'm sure you know it. And DocuSign. How many documents can we sign remotely? We can sign quite a few, depending again on the legal system, but the majority can be done like this already. So we don't have to keep sending paperwork back and forth. And also on the right, there's a really interesting tool for virtual team building. I'm actually attending an event that is hosted by them tomorrow. They give you virtual tours. You can travel virtually to Paris. You travel to Barcelona. You can travel to
Wow.
India. Yeah. So there's a person. So you get like customized boxes. Like I got a lot of cheese and wine, and even this, because I'm going to Paris. I am going tomorrow. Yeah, I have a team meeting, and that's what came. So, and I even have a background with the Eiffel Tower. So you're going tomorrow for 2 hours. There's a person talking about culture, habits, music, everything, and they show you the whole city. I've been to Paris in person several times, so this time it will be the first time virtually. But it's really cool to create a new experience, especially when people are locked up at home during the pandemic. And I see a few questions again. So I don't know if I should go ahead because I started rushing into everything, or if we want to, you want to say something?
No, I believe that we can continue with the presentation and read the rest of the questions at the end of it. Yeah, so we can continue. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so my presentation now, it's the time for questions.
Okay, awesome.
Sorry, we
Perfect
are on
timing then.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, awesome.
okay. So we have two questions. The first one is, for example, have the Indeed folk and others with the HR background and had the right dev system to develop this new competency? Yes, absolutely yes. That's exactly very true. But then again, the dev system, I would say, would be responsible for the toolkit, for teaching people, for building the whole infrastructure, how you can work in a more flexible manner using technology. And the HR background would be more for redesigning the whole employee journey, so to say, and also responsible for the way people feel, well-being, performance tracking, again, things like that, together with online solutions. Thank you. I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, and one more from Alicia. We have, my biggest concern is theft of company time. How can I ensure employees are actually working while working from home? I know people who work from home and take naps or play Xbox when they are supposed to be working. So, this is a serious issue. My question is why? So, there can be different aspects that we need to take a look into. The first thing is, do we have the right people on board? Okay, do we have the right people on board who understand why they have joined the company and what they're supposed to do here? Again, I've mentioned that before, we are all adults. This is not daycare. And if we are willing to work based on supervision, then this is a serious problem. That would be the first thing for me to say, if really people behave that way. The second aspect would be, how do we look at time theft? Because are we looking how do we perceive, I mean, how do we look at time theft? Time theft, that this is a crime, okay, and we know that. So, but what I mean is, do we track work by what? Sitting in front of our laptop and typing or clicking? What is work to us? So That would be really interesting, because there may be people who within 2 hours they will do 5 things, and there may be people who will do 3 things because they're slower. And my question is, should we force those people who do 5 things to sit and pretend that they're working, just to say we're not stealing your time, rather than, okay, you finished that, you can go to the kitchen and have coffee, or you can, I don't know, play Xbox for 15 minutes, even in that case. But well, maybe that's quite controversial. Again, you shouldn't be playing when you work. But I would say it rather would be setting goals this way, that it would be impossible to do things like that. Because if somebody knows, and you have these all tools that I have shared with you, um, I have shared with you that when you do project management, and then we have even Kanban boards, and we have deadlines, then when somebody knows that they have a deadline by the end of the day, and that they have 4 things to do and 2 meetings in between, well, it will show lack of progress. So then I would rather say, how can those people be playing while they're supposed to deliver the results? If the result is not there, you got them. What were you doing today for 8 hours? Like, you had 4 tasks to do. You agreed on them. We've agreed on them in the beginning. This is not done. What were you doing? Why isn't it done? Maybe you need some training. Maybe you need to upskill yourself, whatever that is. Oh, I've been working. Oh, I've been playing on Xbox. Here we go. This is time theft.
Yeah.
That way, rather than, so it's all going to be goals and tracking and Gantt charts and Kanban boards in the beginning, because it is that people are doing this intentionally, but it is because people are maybe not doing this intentionally, meaning they know what time theft is, but then nobody taught them how to work in a smart way. That would be the whole concept of smart working, not just sitting somewhere for hours. I remember a company, I will just share this story really quickly, 1 minute, I promise. I used to work in a really amazing company in the States. That was a corporation, was in 2015. Right after that, I had my first remote job. That was in 2015 as well. But I joined that one first, and then it was an amazing company, wonderful people. Everything was perfect. Just one tiny problem: I had to be at work at 7:58. I had to clock in, and then during a break at 10 o'clock, I was allowed to go to the kitchen and have coffee, and then there was another hourly break for lunch. And then at 3 o'clock again, I had a 15-minute break for coffee. The problem was that I was so quick with everything that I was doing. Not that I'm saying that I'm extremely smart here or whatever, but the problem is that I was bored to death since 3 o'clock. I was so bored that I was sitting like this and I was pretending that I was working. I was not able to leave, the office space earlier. Absolutely not. And I was like, come on, this is like a complete waste of time. And then what are you getting from me sitting there doing nothing? Nothing. The response is nothing. So again, track the output, not presence. And time theft, to be very precise, why do we work the way we work? Why do we have a 40-hour work week on average? Because we consider it as a standard. Where does it come from? Well, it was first introduced, the whole time movement was first introduced in the 19th century. And Henry Ford in the States was the first one in 1926 to allow people to work less. Because you must know that during the Industrial Revolution, people worked 80, 90 hours per week on average. And there were no rules, no labor laws. And 40 hours, this is something that was imposed 100 years ago, more or less, to protect people from working more. And today we start looking at it this way: oh, you're stealing my time. Whereas the purpose of introducing it was the fact that people were overworked in factories, and there were no labor laws. Children were working in toxic environments. Children, because they were small and they used them to do that kind of work. And that was a massive problem, and people were objectified. And that's one of the reasons why we have these time frames in all these countries all around the world adopted. Okay. So, and now when we're in the digital era and we're in the service industry, not in manufacturing, we can't treat the circumstances the same way. So then presence was, the core, because when you were at the factory, you would do things, you would deliver. In the service industry, where we have the majority is knowledge workers, We should track productivity a completely different way. Um, or can you get a second job to do in the gaps? What are the gaps? That would be my question. What are the gaps? I have 5 or 6 jobs. I work with 5 or 6 companies and I deliver my results. So I always said it this way: if you're a responsible person and if you deliver to the company what you're supposed to deliver, and you're happy and everything is all right, it's enough to have one job. But the rise of the gig economy, people working on the side. Actually, I got a really interesting newsletter today. I am on a newsletter about the gig economy, and I'm going to share this with you right now. What I read today: the gig economy, so getting jobs on the side, that is powered by LinkedIn and by Forbes. So listen carefully. Maybe it's time for companies to admit defeat. Global gig economy is estimated to amount by $455 billion by 223. Many people are starting to work on the side, and this is on the rise. So again, output, not physical presence. Um, yeah, and then again, well, you address tools, and the 1800s factory, the tools were there. Yes, but that was manufacturing and factories. Today we have the service industry. The service industry now creates it. When we look at the ratio between manufacturing and the service industry, there's many, many more companies in the service industry. And we are also in the digital era, not in the industrial era. So we have technology for knowledge workers to deliver the results rather than use physical tools in a factory where time would be relevant. But again, it's a long discussion. So I know that we have 2 minutes left and the webinar is going to end. So I strongly encourage, you, if you want to continue the discussion, to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, my page, remoteworkadvocate.com. I'm literally everywhere. I live virtually, but I'm also a real person, just in case.
Right, right, yeah, and that was just right my next question, that where can people reach out to you? So if they want to learn more about this, if you would like to share, I know that you share your site, but I believe that you have this remoteworkadvocate.com right in the right part of the screen. So for all of you, you would like to reach out. I believe it is important. It is an amazing presentation. I mean, it covered all aspects of it, and we are very, very impressed. And we personally, we live doing remote work. All the developers that we assign through Symbiosis are remote developers. So I believe that we have learned a lot from this presentation. Just from everyone in the audience, we'll be sharing this with you, the recording, and also the presentation as well, if it's available, so they can review it and they can reach out to you with further questions.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And again, as listed here, more than welcome. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Remote Work Advocate. I have a YouTube channel with many, many videos. Yeah, I do many publications. I'm on Instagram as well, remoteworkadvocate.com. I'm on Twitter as well. So wherever you want to find me, you will find me.
That's great. That's great. And yeah, I believe that this is a very interesting topic, that it will continue to grow, not as a trend, because it is something that is necessary. So it's something that is going to happen, yes or no. So it is important that we learn how to integrate these tools, these best practices into our companies. And we are very, very, very thankful for having you today. I believe that it was amazing, and we will continue to send all the information to the attendees so they can learn more and reach out to you if they're interested. So thank you very much, Nadia.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, everyone. It's been amazing. Thank you.
See you guys.